Support for the Trailblazers.fm podcast comes from the Campaign for Black Male Achievement, a national membership network of more than 5,000 members all across the country working to improve the life outcomes of our Black men and boys. I'm so excited to share that on Thursday, October 18th, CBMA will be celebrating their 10th year anniversary and commemorate a decade of growth and impact for the Black Male Achievement Movement. Now, this gala is going to be honoring Tanya Allen of the Skillman Foundation, one of our past guests, John Rogers Jr., the CEO of Errol Investments, and George Soros, founder of the Open Society Foundations. To learn more about purchasing tickets to the gala, or if you'd like to become a sponsor for the event, please visit blackmaleachievement.org, or you can shoot me an email, steven@tbpod.com.
You're listening to the Trailblazers podcast, where we will explore the stories of successful Black professionals. Join us as we highlight the knowledge, resources, and tools of these accomplished trailblazers to help provide the know-how, confidence, and motivation you need to blaze your trail. And now, here's your host, Stephen Hart.
Blazer Nation, welcome back. We've got a brand new episode for you today. Lots of goodness in store with the one and only Nicole Roberts-Jones, who's going to be sharing how we can bankroll our brilliance. Before I introduce Nicole, I wanted to say hello to all our first-time listeners. Big ups, enough respect for coming on and checking us out. You're tuned in to the #1 interview-style podcast, exploring successful Black professionals. And you happen to be listening to the 4th episode in a 6-week series titled Trailblazer Entrepreneurs. This series has been nonstop with the gems. If you're an entrepreneur, you want to go back and check out episode 136 with Janice Bryant-Howroyd and then work your way forward. And do me a solid. I want you to take a screenshot of your podcast player right now and share it up on IG stories, Facebook stories, or on your favorite social platform. Tag us up. We're at TBPod, or you can tag me personally at Stephen A. Hart. And guess what? I'm going to show you some love right back, right? So also want you guys, I don't say this quite often enough, but if you're an Apple, do me a favor. Consider sharing a 5-star review for Trailblazers. It does quite a bit for helping us to continue to elevate in the ranks within Apple. So that's much appreciated if you can leave us a 5-star review and rating. Let's not delay any further, right? I want to get into today because today you're in for a treat, right? Our featured trailblazer is Nicole Roberts-Jones. She is an entrepreneur, best-selling author, international speaker, and CEO of Fierce Factor Lab. In just 1 year, Nicole went from making $13,000 a year in her business to over $200,000. And she's going to share some of that wisdom and information with you today and insights with you today. Blazer Nation, get your Evernote ready or grab a pad and a pen and get set to receive today's mission field from our featured trailblazer, Nicole Roberts-Jones. Let's go. Nicole, welcome, and thank you so much for sharing in this conversation with me tonight.
Yay, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. So to start this conversation off tonight, I would love for us to talk about gratitude. I think gratitude allows us to reflect and express, things that are really beyond our control or our doing, right? And have helped us to kind of get to where we are in our journey. So I want to ask you, what's one unexpected blessing that you're most grateful for in your life right now?
The unexpected, well, I don't know if it's unexpected now at this juncture, but I love that I get to do what I want to do during the day. I know that sounds crazy, but yes. I absolutely am grateful that I get to wake up and had I call it Jesus time in the morning, so I get centered and get into my core, and then I can go into working out. And I have to do it in that order because I cannot stand working out. So I think I'm grateful that I can really plan out my days to do what feels most peace-led to me.
Girl, you're talking to me right now because for those of us working for the man.
Right, because then you have to get up at a certain time, right? So for me, say I don't feel like getting up at 6, which is when I should get up, right? Say I get up at 7. Well, because I work, from home when I'm not on the road, I can do that. And that's what I'm most grateful for. And I can still start my day the same way, even if I get up an hour late.
Well, whether I work for the man or I work for an entrepreneur, at the end of the day, I work for a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old. Let's go open my eyes. Right
That's
now.
a whole other conversation. Right.
And say, Daddy, we're ready for breakfast. Come on, dude.
Right.
Nah, I appreciate that, though. Thank you for sharing that. So you told me that you grew up in Los Angeles, right?
Yes.
Are you from a big family?
No, I'm an only child. Only me. So yes,
child.
I'm spoiled.
Wow.
I'm spoiled. I tell my husband, don't be mad at me. I'm spoiled. That's not my fault.
Well, I saw that your early career days you spent in the entertainment world, which makes a lot of sense being in LA.
Yes.
And you worked in talent management and casting, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Was that your dream career growing up?
You know, what's interesting is I never stopped as a child, even into my early 20s. I never stopped long enough to ask myself, what do I want? So when I started in the entertainment industry, now keep in mind what I'm going to say doesn't mean I don't miss the parties. Okay. So let me keep it all the way real. But I realized that, I woke up one day in 1993 and realized I had built an 8-year career. And although it looked like a dream, right? I was going to all the hot Hollywood parties. I was bumping elbows with the stars. At the time I worked on the #1 TV show in Fox. I was living this dream. But one day I woke up and I said to myself, how did I get here? I began to realize that I was living a nightmare. And I'm only saying that because I grew up into perception. I never stopped long enough to ask myself, what do you want?
Wow. We've talked about this several times on the podcast, and it's such a challenging place to be able to pivot yourself from what others aspire for you.
Yes.
To what you have a vision, for yourself and for your life. And so, let's talk about this because today you're now a nationally recognized speaker, you're a best-selling author, you're an amazing coach, and you've created several successful products and services. What actually fueled that pivot from, we're talking about this, but what was the actual point? What actually fueled that pivot from the talent management and the casting to saying, I'm going to start my own company and craft this sort of platform that you now have for yourself?
So I love that you asked that question because I never set out to start my own company. I always say I became an entrepreneur on an accident. If you would have told me then or asked me then, did I want to have my own business? I would have thought you were crazy. I would have been like, really? Yeah. No, Stephen, I don't know what you're talking about. So what happened was this was in 1993, a year after the LA riots. And being from South Central Los Angeles, I looked around my neighborhood. Now, I grew up in this neighborhood. Mind you, I'm hanging out with the drug dealers, the gang members, but I didn't realize that's who they were. These were people I knew since I was 5, right? But when I moved home from college, I began to see my neighborhood differently because I had moved away for 4.5 years, right? And so here I am in riot-torn Los Angeles, driving from my parents' house, because I was still 23 back then, right? Driving from my parents' house into my Hollywood dream, looking at kids that looked like me struggling like I had never seen before, right? And so in the midst of me feeling dazed and confused because I feel like I'm at a job that doesn't fit me. Now, every time I talk to one of my friends, they think I've lost my mind because I told you I was going to all the hot Hollywood parties, right? So they're like, girl, didn't you go to the premiere of so-and-so yesterday? Girl, anyway, hush, right? So I'm confused because I'm feeling like I'm in a place that doesn't fit. And so in the middle of that, one of my good girlfriends says, Nicole, let's volunteer at this youth program at our church. And it's a Friday night. And as I walk into that church that Friday night and I start working with young women, something in my spirit becomes alive. Wow. And as I'm working with them and my heart is lighting up, I'm seeing that their eyes are lighting up. And I realize, oh my God, this is what I'm meant to do. But here's the thing. This was before there was such thing as a coach. This was not glamorous. Nobody was, knocking anything over to do this work. But for the first time in my life, I felt like, oh my God, I am alive. And so at 23 in 1993, and don't you dare figure out how old I am now. But anyway, I really started doing this as a volunteer. I started working with African-American teenage girls at my church. This was First Stand Me, one of the biggest Black churches in LA, 18,000 members to give you context. So this was no small task. And I just started as a volunteer. Over time, just to answer your question, how did I get here? What I began to do was I started to ask myself, how did I quote unquote make it? Like, I wasn't smarter than any of my other friends in my neighborhood. I'm the only one that went to college though. My parents didn't make any more money. And I realized in that moment, I just made a different choice. That's the only reason why my life wasn't defined by jail, drugs, or drive-by shootings. like a lot of my friends in my neighborhood, right? And so I started thinking, God, what if I could stand in the gap like my mentor when I met at 12 who was studying for LSAT? And I'm like, what is that? Nobody in my family went to college. Nobody in my family, I didn't even think law school was for people of color. I'm keeping it all the way real, right? This was in the 80s. So literally, I began to create what I knew helped me, quote unquote, make it. And part of that was having a vision for my future and understanding how to get there. So to make a really long story short, how to get from there to here was my girls started becoming women. And as they started growing up, my gift started growing up. And I began to say, you know what? I kind of want to do this for a full-time job. So I started trying to find a job doing this thing. And by the way, that little program I started in my church became its own nonprofit. And I had 10 chapters in 10 states over time. So I started wanting to do more of this with women because my girls started calling me with grown folk issues, like I have the job I always wanted, but I'm not making the money I really thought I would make, or the problem I had, which I have the job I always wanted, but I don't know if this really fits, right? I'm good at it, but I don't like it. So that really over time, I started trying to find a job doing that. And over time, I began to build my business around that. And so that's how I became an entrepreneur. So that's why I say I did it on accident. I didn't set out to be here, but here I am.
Wow. I know that you're a coach today, but when you're getting things going, and you said there weren't coaches back then, but was there a point where you hired a coach to kind of help you build and grow the business?
I love that you asked this question. So I've been doing this now for 25 years, right? So by 17 years in, so about 2010, my program, I told you a few minutes ago, I gave you the quick version. So let me tell you
we got time, girl.
the real, give me details, right? So some 17 years in, by then I had 10 chapters in 10 states. Again, my program was growing by leaps and bounds. By then I had started a for-profit division coaching entrepreneurs really to help them what I call now bankroll your brilliance. Take your gift and understand how to monetize it. And I love doing that work, but I had 100% coaching client roster, meaning I couldn't take another client. So I thought, okay, in 2010, if I write a book, I can give the concepts to women. And fellas, I do work with men. So every time I say women, don't think I'm leaving you out because I'm not. But so I can give the concepts to women. The majority of my clients are women. And I could raise money for my nonprofit. Well, when my book came out, I started getting invitations to speak all over the country. So literally every single weekend, I'm either going to meet another church. My youth program was faith-based. I was either going to meet another church to start a chapter of my youth program, or I'm speaking at a women's conference, a youth symposium, or entrepreneurial conference. So I had made it to the place where I really had dreamed of that moment standing in that church in 1993. Now, again, this is 17 years in. So I want you to get this. I was doing all of that, but I was only making $13,000 a year. So yes, I had a daytime job to pay for my nighttime calling is what I used to call it, right? Wow. And I got to tell you, I remember this moment like it was yesterday. So I had an epiphany moment that changed everything. So I'm going to answer your question. I promise you that. So I remember it was the first Sunday of November. It was November 7th of 2010. And I remember it because I had just gotten home from another speaking weekend and I was sitting on my couch. And my daytime job was I was an adjunct professor at Boston University. My class was at 8 a.m. I had no idea what the heck I was teaching in the morning. I hadn't even looked at a book. And I was tired. I was like, I just thought, I can't do this anymore. Yes, this is the thing. I knew I was meant to do it. I was great at it. I'm traveling around the world. I'm touching all these people. But this $13,000, yeah, that's not cutting it. And so I remember like sitting on my couch, tears streaming down my face in exhaustion. And you know how your mate can do. My husband says, well, then you just need to quit. And I'm like, no, this is what I'm meant to do. You know how dramatic. That's how I am, right? I was at a crossroad. And literally it was one direction was this thing that I know is my purpose. I'm great at it, but I am struggling to make money in it. And in the other direction is my 9-to-5. And every time I thought about just staying as a professor, now don't get me wrong, I love to teach, but just sitting in a corner office just wasn't who I was. Unless it's my corner office in my business, right? So I had a decision to make. And in that moment, I realized that I had taken myself as far as I could take myself. And many times there's a quote by, I hope I say his name right, A.V. Bernard. He's a pastor in Brooklyn, New York. And he said, the tools that you use on this level are not sufficient for your next.
Yes.
And the reason my business struggled for 17 years is I kept using the same tools over and over and over, thinking it was going to produce something else. So in other words, I just kept sitting still, working harder, working 10 extra hours. I'm going to work more hours, but I kept using the same tools, thinking I was going to produce a different result. So it was in that moment that I realized I needed help. And so I hired a coach. And I got to tell you, in my first coaching session, my coach showed me. And here's what she said. She said, Nicole, didn't you just tell me you're an adjunct professor and you teach program development? You teach it right now at Boston University and you taught it at USC for 5 years before you moved. And I'm like, yeah, right. All proud of myself. Yeah, right. And then she said, and didn't you tell me you used to have a consulting practice and you went into businesses? You work with heads of state, you've worked with nonprofits, you've worked with small businesses. And what you've done is you've gone into those businesses and developed programs. And I'm proud of myself yet again, like, yeah, like my coach just knows me, right? And, but the next thing she says to me shifts everything. And I want you guys to get this, no matter if you're listening to me or listening to this podcast and you are an entrepreneur already, or you're someone that's at a 9-to-5 and you're at that place I was in and you're like, I'm not going to make any money, so I'm never going to start my business as a full-time thing. Here was my issue. My coach said, now again, I taught program development. I had a program development consulting firm. She said, Nicole, you don't have any programs for yourself. Duh. Right. So what happened is, and this is where so many entrepreneurs fail, is I had been working for 17 years on a one-to-one model in my business, meaning that if you only have so many hours in a day and you have to be present to do everything you do in your business, then you're already taking away your capacity to serve more people and make more money. And so my problem in that moment is everything I did, Nicole, had to be present. And so in that moment, it was like I felt the heavens open up. I could hear the angels sing, oh, right? I had like an epiphany, like, oh my God. So that night, I literally had a speaking gig in 2 days. And I had never in my life, now mind you, I wasn't getting paid to speak, by the way. I was flying myself to every speaking gig and speaking, right? And I hadn't learned to monetize. And I thought to myself, oh my God, I need to put together a program I can offer at the speaking gig. I put a program together that night. I made $10,000 in 60 days off of that first program that I made. Now, mind you, I told you, 10,000 in 60 days when I made 13,000 a year for 17 years. And that was on a good year, by the way. Right. So then I started creating program after program and really created a formula from what I had been teaching that as an adjunct professor, what I had been doing as a consultant, and literally saw my revenue go from 13,000 to 200,000 within a year.
Wow. Oh my gosh, what a praise report.
Right. And so I'm so passionate. Number one, when you asked me, did I hire a coach? I have a coach right now. I've had a coach ever since that moment. By the way, my coach cost me then 30,000 and I was only making 13,000, double than what I made in my business. And mind you, my daytime job helped me pay my bills. So it's not like I could take money out of that to be able to pay my coach. I was eating off of my daytime job and having my lights and all that fun stuff turned on, right? And so I realized that I had to invest at the level to which I wanted to see the return come back to me. And had I not risked it all to gain it all and did that big, bold, crazy move, right? All my friends are like, you paying what? Yeah, I'm saying that to myself too. But I said, this is going to be my last straw. I'm going to put it all in. So I opened up a credit card, by the way, because it's not like I could take a loan out because, I wasn't making no money. Right. So, and I literally made that money back within the first 6 months.
So here's the thing. There's like 5 million things you said just now that I want to unpack. Oh my gosh. I love your testimony on going from 13,000 to 200 in a year. That's like 15x growth. Oh my gosh.
Right.
That's amazing. Yet so many of us have this internal genius, right? The gift or our gift to the world.
Right.
But what's stopping us from standing in our own power?
So there's a couple things. That's such a loaded question. You don't even realize it. So let me see if I get excited when somebody asks me something like that. So let me try to calm down so you guys can understand me, right? So one is many of us discount our greatness because it comes easy and effortless for you. You think, oh, who's going to pay for that? And oh, I can't ask people to pay me for that. So in that moment with my coach, when I had been teaching program development, now mind you, I never applied to be an adjunct professor. My college professor at USC called me and asked me to teach, right? So here I am. I'm only telling you guys that not to brag, but I'm discounting my greatness that I got offered to teach program development. I had a consulting practice going into businesses in California. The only reason I still didn't have it is because I moved to Boston. I had this new husband of mine that got this job in Boston and I moved to Boston. So I was discounting my own greatness. Many of us.
I feel like there's a spotlight on me right now.
Right. And so literally, here's what I know. I believe each of us are born to this world on special assignment. So that means you're James Bond and I'm Jasmine Bond, right? And so that gift in you puts you here on assignment. when you stand in the full power of that gift, there are people that need that gift in you. And so here's the second thing I learned, and here's what you need to know. I'm going to give you an example instead of telling a story about me again. If I use an example of a client that I had the privilege to work with, Deborah Tillman, who is a Lifetime's super nanny. So I met her at a conference, and she's traveling all over the world, speaking at parenting conferences. She's a parenting expert. And she had, at her time in her business, she couldn't take another client. And I said to her, the same way my client said to me, how many programs do you have? She looked at me. Well, I can't, when I work with families, I tailor the experience. I said, girl, that's you in your own head. This is her discounting her own greatness, mind you, right? So in that moment for her, the same way I did for me, and I don't know if you guys heard me say this, so I'm going to repeat it. I said earlier when I told my story that I took everything I taught in my curriculum as a teacher, as a professor, everything I had done in my consulting practice, and I created a formula from it. Right? Now, here's what I mean by that. I'm going to say blueprint because most of us know what a blueprint is. So if when my house was built, someone came up to me and said, Nicole, this is the next best thing in roofing. And I go buy the roof, right? But I don't look to see what walls go with that roof. I put up the walls that we already had and I don't look at the flooring. And then the rains come and I wonder why my house fell, right? We don't go backwards and then get the blueprint after the house falls apart. But that's what so many of us do in our business. So now let's go back to the Deborah Tillman story, right? So what I mean by a formula is you need to create a blueprint around your gift. See, there's a methodology, there's a formulaic way that you do what you do. Once you can identify that, then you're looking at all the ways you can serve people through your formula. So here's what I mean. Stick with me because some of y'all are like, what? What's she talking about? So in my own formula, I have a 6-step process that I walk people through. If when I'm talking to you, I'm like, oh, what you're saying is step 3. Step 3 can be one program by itself. Step 1 and 2 can be a program by itself. It is actually. Step 1 and 2 is a program, 3, 4, and 5 is, and 6 is a separate program. And what that means is some of my programs are programs where I'm live, like there's one-to-many, meaning they're group programs. And some are programs that I call making money while you sleep, because right now somebody's listening to one of my online programs and I'm not there, but I'm pouring into them because it's recorded. So with Deborah Tillman, what I said to her is you're leaving families behind, because what happens is when you have to be present and you don't look at least 2 additional ways. One, you not being present, which means it's lower hanging, meaning the people that can't afford you also can say yes to that. Or there's a group model, you're leaving families behind. And so in essence, that's really what we did. We created a formula around what she does. She calls it her GPS, her greater parenting system. And now she has a GPS online program, a group program, and she still does one-on-one. And then of course she does speaking, but now she has 3 more streams of income that she didn't have before.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this episode so far. I wanted to take a quick break right here and ask you a quick question. When you hear the words personal branding, what are you thinking of? I have a good many people who have responded to this saying they're thinking of a logo or maybe a website. And those are just a couple elements, right, to a personal brand, but they're not everything. In fact, your personal brand is in large part this ongoing process and development of your online reputation, your image, and a promise you're making to those that you interact with and influence on a day-to-day basis. And it's also derived from who you are, who you want to be, and who people perceive you to be. Now, in 2018, whether you are a CEO, entrepreneur, a corporate professional, or you're a college grad, someone is Googling your name. And the results that they find, if any, and the story being told about you and your brand is going to leave that person who is searching either more or less inclined to connect with you, do business with you, or hire you. And if you know right now that you need to fix this, if you know you need to begin building your personal brand or enhancing what you have already started working on, but you have no idea what to do from here or how to get started, I'd like to encourage you to sign up right now to learn more about my personal branding course called Brand You Academy. It's a first-class 6-week online program designed to help you build your amazing personal brand and digital footprint. If you're interested and you want to learn more, hop on over right now to tbpod.com/brandyou. Again, that's tbpod.com/brandyou. Now let's get back to today's episode. This is amazing because, I'm going to be transparent, right? I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've started several entrepreneurial adventures in the past, if you will, and I've seen the mountaintops, I've seen the dark valleys.
Right.
41 years old. Right now, I'm caught in middle management in the corporate world, right? By day. As you kind of said earlier, what was it? You have a daytime job to pay for your nighttime calling, right? Right. And here we are at night, right? On this podcast, my nighttime calling. But I've been wanting to jump, right? But I'm married. I have a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old, right? Which means that I have a daycare that's more expensive than my mortgage.
Say that. I know that.
Right?
Right.
And it's just, mama wants to make sure we can pay the bills.
Right.
But I love that you're talking about the program because I have been gifting a lot of knowledge.
Yes.
That I'm away. Charging for, right?
Yes.
As you're talking about, it's like almost every week people call me asking me, how do I start a podcast?
So you know what you're doing.
Jump on a call and invest in that person with my wisdom, but it's not, I haven't created a program for it.
And when people are coming to you, I want you guys to get this. I call it the Lighthouse Effect. So what's happening with you is people see the light, the gift, the brilliance in you. It's like the lighthouse does on a dark ocean, dark sea at night. It glides that boat into shore. So people are being glided into your gift because they see that you have the thing that they need. Remember, I said you came here on assignment. So what happens is you discount it. And this is your intellectual property, the very way that you came here wired to live abundantly. Now, what I tell most people like you, and even though I'm talking to Stephen, I'm talking to all of y'all, right? Is when you want to start as an entrepreneur, I always tell people, don't quit your day job. That's stupid because you need to be able to eat. And how could you put together a company when your lights are out and you have no Wi-Fi, right? Because you can't afford it. So what you want to do is build your business alongside your 9 to 5. And that's why you want to start with programs that do not include you being live or present. So that program can be creating revenue for you as you're building your business alongside your 9 to 5.
Yes. You are unpacking some real questions that I've been fighting with for months. I mean, I've been against this wall. I kid you not. Because truly, as we're on this 8:30 p.m. call, it's the time. It's the only time I have to invest in the podcast. And so it's like the spare time. And for the last year, I'm saying, how do I create income that is going to help me to make that next shift? But I just don't have any more time in the day. I'm like, I need 3 more hours. Right. Like, there's just no more time.
Right.
But this is like, it's so simple. But, simple said, but how done, right? Like, how do we step into that?
And what's interesting is as you're saying that, I also want to say this is why you have to create a blueprint first. So those of you that are listening like, I'm going to run and do an online program. It's not that simple. You've got to create a blueprint first. You've got to create a formula from your genius. And the reason I say that is there's so many people that suffer from Milli Vanilli syndrome in entrepreneur land. Now, those of you that don't know who Milli Vanilli is, you're making me feel old. Stephen, please tell me you know who Milli Vanilli is, right? Yes. If you don't, please Google Milli Vanilli. But let me just say this real quick so you know who they are. So
you can teach the young ones.
out in the 80s, and they had a Grammy out. They had the hit single. I'm not going to try to sing it. But what happened is after they won that Grammy, I can't remember if it was their manager or their agent, confessed that they lip synced on that track. And so what happens is when you're not clear on what your brilliance is and you don't create a formula from it, what you're doing is lip syncing on somebody else's track. So if you go out and create a program, you are lip syncing on my track right now. Keeping it real, right? Because you haven't taken time to understand what your formula is. And when people say yes to you, they're saying yes to your gift. So we got to get clear on what your gift is, how to create a formula from it. And then we create your program so that it becomes a platform to profit. Now, let me tell you what I mean by that. By the way, everything I'm saying, a shameless plug, is in my book, Find Your Fierce book.
Yes.
For those of you that want more, because I know I'm going fast, because, we don't have enough time. I'm passionate about this. This is what I teach now. Because I learned it for myself. I realized it wasn't that hard. But the reason why you should have a formula is you should have, if I use Deborah Tillman for an example, when people come to you, you've got to have at least 3 ways they can say yes to you. Some people will only want to work with you one-on-one. That should be the most expensive way someone can say yes to you because it's taking your time, right? Then there should be middle of the road group coaching. And by the way, my group coaching is my signature program. That is the very way. If you ever want to come into my camp, it's that. And I'm not trying to sell, but I'm showing you that then from there, if you're not ready for that, there's a down sell. And the reason I'm telling you that is when you have a platform, there's steps. So my downsell is my first 2 steps. My signature program is my middle 3 steps. And my highest tier program is my final step. So that there are tiers to growing your gift the same way you should take people through a journey. Because listen, it's almost like drinking water from a fire hose. So if I give you everything right now, I'll be like excited and can tell you everything, but you'll be looking at me like, oh my God, that's way too much. Right. And everybody's also in different places. So some people will need me in the middle. Some people will need me at the beginning. Some people are advanced and need me at the next level. So you've got to be able to look at where are people and where do they fit into your blueprint, into your formula, and you start them with where they are.
And I think too, to add to that, I think there's another component of it, right? People invest two ways in you. They invest with their time, and then they invest with their money, right? And creating avenues for them to be introduced to you and date you, so to say, right?
So funny you said that, right?
Where it's less money, right? And less risk to them to get a feel for you on one of your intro programs before maybe stepping up to something that's, bigger commitment.
Well, you know what's interesting? Most people call it marketing. I don't believe in marketing. I call it dating. So it's so funny that you said that. So I think before you even put a ring on it, meaning that you spend some money, right? Yes. Don't mean you don't spend money on a date, those of you that are in relationships right now, right? But people want to experience you before they make a full commitment. So I think some of that needs to be free. And that your step-by-step process also speaks to the visibility strategy you create. So tonight, I'm talking to you guys from my formula, whether you realize it or not. If it's anything outside of my formula, I don't have that conversation. Some of you guys are dating me tonight. It's your first experience of me. It's like an appetizer. You get to taste and see if you like it. And, then you might get invited into another free way to work with me. And over time, if it's a great fit, then you put a ring on it.
Funny you said that. I do marketing by day and actually took my company through that very process. Recently, we sell software that's at least $5,000 up, right? And the website had a big request quote button, but that was like the call to action. And I'm like, how can you ask someone to marry you, right? If they've never had the opportunity to date you first.
Right.
And I completely buy into that process, right? Like, have to have an entry way that allows people to get to know you and get to feel you out. Because just as you said, what our gift is, what we offer to the world is unique. No one else can offer that but you.
Right.
And, you have to be able to allow people to say, you know what? That's either for me or not before making that time or monetary investment.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you just said that this is your gift. And the one thing that there's so many things I hear entrepreneurs say all the time, but you just made me think about this. How come there are tons of dentists in the world? Or if you go to the grocery store and you walk down the bread aisle, there's like all kinds of bread, right? But there's one bread, even though I'm not supposed to be eating bread right now, there's one bread that you will navigate to. Just like I absolutely love my dentist. She's a white, older Jewish woman, and she and I talk about love and hip hop. I don't know why, and I love it because I can, my mouth is open. I don't know how she understands what I'm talking about, but she's unique because she and I have this chemistry, right? So of course there are other people that do what you do, but nobody does it like you. So when you start to stand in the full power of it, it literally shifts everything for you.
There's a know, like, and trust, right? That people get to know who you are and trust you.
Yes.
You become brand loyal to them. And to your earlier point, once they've developed that trust with you at the intro stage,
right,
it's so much easier for you to upsell and to, continue that relationship on from where they started to the next. I love this. I really appreciate all that you've shared here. And this program piece is huge for me because you kind of set off a light bulb moment for me here. It's something that, I've debated before, but you said it in a way tonight, just really kind of opened my eyes. Any other tips that you kind of wanted to share on, stepping into that program-based mindset and because you shared really having a blueprint first, right?
And if you don't mind, I'd love to give all you, including you, Stephen, a gift. So I have an online program. I have an online program called Bankrollyourbrilliance.com. It walks you through the 3-step process. I've talked, around it, but that'll deep dive into it. Those of you that are interested in that. So just go to Bankrollyourbrilliance.com. And literally, it'll show you the 6 streams of income you should have in your business too. So I will say there's 3 things you've got to do. Number 1, don't put all your eggs in one basket. In other words, stop serving people from one way that you're working with them. The second is that you've got to have some way that you're making money while you sleep. There's no way that you can grow your business. What most billionaires don't tell you is they have multiple streams of income. So you've got to do the same thing if you're going to build your own empire and get into multi-million-dollar success. Listen, I've been doing multiple six figures for the last 5 years. I'm working on my $1 million year. I'm really working hard for it to be this year, but it's looking like it's going to be next year, but it's coming, right?
Keep working, girl.
Right. And then the third thing I always tell people is stop discounting your greatness. Your 5% is somebody else's 100%. And they're looking for that 5% more that they need, and you have it. And every day that you don't stand in the power of your gift, you're holding up somebody's answered prayer, dare I say.
Nicole, I would love for this conversation to go for about 2 hours.
Right.
But we will definitely need a part 2 to this at some future point.
I look forward to it.
Before I let you go, I have a couple last questions for you that we ask all our featured guests. And so, first of the two, are there any books that you'd recommend to us that you think, we should definitely add to our arsenal to bankroll our brilliance?
Right. Look, one of my new favorite books is called Being is the New Doing by Radia Rhodes. If I'm saying her name right. Being is the new doing. We're human beings, but most of us really are human doings. We're not focused on being. So it really shifts your continence and how you be. And so that book to me has just been a level shift for me. The second book really that got this party started for me is Woman Thou Art Loosed. Now, here's the thing with Woman Thou Art Loosed. I think for me, because I was stuck in the land of perception for, up until 1993, when I stopped to ask myself, what do you want? I had allowed my neighborhood to define who I was and my family to define who I was and my friends. And I started saying, hold on, wait a minute. I felt like, remember Janet Jackson had that song Control Out? I promise you, I felt like Janet wrote that song for me because I needed my control back, right? And so in that moment, I felt like I had to free myself from everything that was holding me back. And so when I read that book, in 1993, or did I read it in 92? I don't know. I think I had a culmination of it. That really shifted everything for me. So I will say right now, those are my two. Well, one is my all-time favorite, and then Being is the New Doing is my new favorite right now.
Love it. Nicole, last question for you tonight. What's one action that you should begin doing right now, this week, that's going to help us to blaze our trail?
I think you should do that thing that scares the bejesus out of you, right? I think so many of us look for safety. And many of us have this dream, this desire that we don't tell anybody about because how dare we dream that? It's time for you to start acting on that. And then the next question, somebody said, well, what do I do to start? Take one step, whatever that is. And that one step is going to be scary. Stephen Furtick said this quote, and I quote it everywhere because I love it. He said, fear is not the enemy of faith. It's familiarity. And many of us want to grow, but we want to be comfortable. And you heard me say, when I hired my coach, that wasn't comfortable. I was scared to death. I was like, what the heck? What if I can't pay this credit card payment? But I had to risk it all to gain it all in that moment. And so the one charge I would say to you is, what is that scary thing? And just do it.
Yes. Nicole Roberts Jones, you've been amazing. Tell our Blazer Nation how we can stay connected to you. And we can wrap up for tonight.
So on Twitter and Instagram, I am in Roberts Jones because my name is too long, in Roberts Jones. And then on Facebook, you can follow me at The Fierce Factor Lab with Nicole Roberts Jones.
I will make sure that I tag up and post all those links to Nicole's social handles and her websites over at tbpod.com. Nicole, thank you so very much.
Yay, thank you for having me. This was fun.
Well, that's it for today. Thanks again for listening to this episode of the Trailblazers podcast. I'll be posting links to all of today's book recommendations and links mentioned on our show notes page at tbpod.com. If today was your first time listening to the Trailblazers podcast, I just want to extend a warm Trailblazers welcome to you. We're so happy to have you here, and we encourage you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button in your favorite podcast app. Go ahead and browse through some of our past episodes to keep the knowledge flowing. If you're a fan of the podcast and today's content, and you're maybe already subscribed to the podcast, please continue to share and invite your friends, your family, your colleagues to listen to an episode that you think might impact them most. We believe that someone listening to these inspiring stories will be moved to make significant changes that will have generational impact for many others, both now and well into the future. Don't miss next week's episode. New episodes are released each and every Monday by about 5 a.m. Eastern. Trailblazers, jump off this podcast today. Go find a way to rise above, go way beyond, and keep blazing your trail. Cheers.